Hey guys, in this video I want to take some time to talk about what is the AP test like? How many questions does it have? How is it divided up? What do I need to know in order to be able to get that 5 that I've been working for? So we're going to start out with what is the AP test like? So according to the information that we get from the College Board, the AP Calculus exam will continue to have consistent question types, weighting, and scoring guidelines every year. In other words, they're not making any big changes in the test. So you and your students, and most importantly right now, I'm concerned about my students, know what to expect on exam day. That's really important, that you walk into the test knowing exactly what to expect, no surprises. The overall format of the exam, including the weighting, the timing, and the number of questions in each section, won't change. So this is a really predictable test, and that works in your favor to help you score that 5 that you're working for. As you know, we always say in class, you got to know your stuff, and I know you responded. So, section 1, the multiple choice section. In section 1, there are 45 total questions, total amount of time, hour 45 minutes, and that counts for 50% of the exam. Now those 45 questions are broken up into 2 parts. First is part A with 30 questions. You get 60 minutes, so on average that's about 2 minutes a question. And that doesn't mean you'll need 2 minutes for every question, and some minutes you'll need more, maybe than 2 minutes. On this section, a calculator is not permitted, so that's your no calculator section. Then in part B, you'll get 15 questions. You get 45 minutes. And in that section, you are allowed to use a graphing calculator, but that does not mean every question requires a calculator. And as you practice, you'll see that there are many questions on the calculator part that do not need or can be used at all graphing calculator. The questions include algebraic, exponential, logarithmic, trigonometric, and general types of functions. Nothing's going to surprise you there. We've been practicing that all year long. Questions include analytical, graphical, tabular, verbal types of descriptions. Again, nothing is new there. These are the kinds of things that you've seen all year long. And look at me having fun with that, trying to circle stuff and write stuff on this screen with a mouse. Next part's really, really important for you to understand. Every question is on the multiple choice is worth 1 point. So think of it as like $1. Every time you get a question right, you gain $1. And you can only gain points. You can't really lose anything. So there's no penalty for guessing. So on the multiple choice section, you should guess at anything that you're not sure about. If you run out of time, hopefully that won't be the case, but you should guess. Leave nothing blank on the multiple choice. Obviously, if you can eliminate any answers, you increase your chance of getting a problem correct. So as we said, you got to know your stuff all the time. Section 2. In section 2, that is the free response section, and that is where you thoroughly and completely show your work. And we've done lots of practice, and I've talked to you a lot about what has to be shown and what can be left out. You're going to get a total of 6 free response questions, and it is the other 50% of the exam. In part A, you get 2 questions with a graphing calculator. There will be some things that you cannot do without that calculator. So you're allowed to use the calculator to do any and everything it can, including solving equations, looking at graphs, integration, derivatives, anything that calculator will do, you're allowed to use it in the first 2 questions. So remember, the calculator is like, think of the test like a sandwich. You begin the test without a calculator with multiple choice. Then in part B of the free multiple choice section, you're allowed a calculator. Then you're allowed a calculator for the first set of free response. So that's like your sandwich. In the middle, you have the calculator. And then in part B of the free response, you have 4 questions in which there is no calculator permitted. In the free response, questions include various types of functions and functional representations and a roughly equal mix of procedural and conceptual questions. You've seen so many free response questions this year, you're not going to be surprised by what you see. Questions include at least 2 questions that incorporate a real-world context, again, nothing surprising there, or scenario into the question. Now, how are they scored? Every free response question is worth 9 points. Every single question, you can gain 9 points. And again, you can only gain, you can't lose any points here. So you got to try, you got to persevere. Don't spend too much time on one question. Go find the things you know how to do. Do those and make sure you gain those points, and then come back to the things that you're not quite so sure about or that you find difficult or confusing. Sometimes you read a question and you think it's confusing, you go on, you come back and you read it again, and you realize that there's something that you didn't read or pay attention to the first time. Now, something really important to note, really important about free response questions, is that when you complete Part B, when you complete the non-calculator section, if you still have time remaining, you may go back to questions 1 and 2, but you cannot use your calculator again. So that doesn't mean that there aren't any points that you might, I think I misspelled calculator now that I'm looking at that word. I see it right there. It's misspelled. Anyway, that's not the focus. You may go back to questions 1 and 2 with the time remaining if you need to, or if you want to, or want to check them or look at them. So that's really important to know about the test. So, how can you get a 5? Well, you can get a 5 because most of the work, honestly, is behind you. Now what you've got to do during this time is just put it all together and practice, 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 practice. And during that practice, you've got to go back and figure out what you know and what you don't know, and you just reinforce the things you're not so sure about. So, do the review work. It works. It will get you ready. Know the test, and that's what I'm talking about. How much time do you get? What is the format of the test? What am I going to be facing? So make sure you know what the test is like, and by doing the practice, all you're doing is practicing old tests, so you're going to know the format. Now, throughout the years, the numbers of questions have changed on the various parts, so you will notice that when you do some of the older tests, the numbers of questions are a little different than what I talked about in this video. The more recent tests follow the guidelines that I've talked about on the previous page. The number one enemy on the test is the time. So when you first start doing your review, you're not really worrying about the time. The first part of the test is to figure out what do I know and what do I not know, and reinforce that. But as you get closer and closer to the test, there's going to be a point at which you decide, okay, I got to start timing myself to see what it feels like to take a test in a time situation. So that comes later on as you get closer and closer to the actual test. Another thing that will make you successful is know how and when to use your calculator. Not every problem will allow you to use the use of a calculator. So you got to know what the calculator will do, what it won't do, when to use it, when not to use it, and be familiar with where the parentheses go on the calculator and how to do all the various features so that it's second nature and you're not nervous about that. In your resource packet, there are several pages that explain how to use every style of TI calculator to do everything you possibly need to do on the AP test. So take time to look through that resource packet. Another thing that we have focused on this year are our math eyes, meaning that we have to know how to read the test, and we know that reading means interpreting, understanding what they're giving me. What is the extraneous information? What math concept do they want me to deal with? So being able to use your math eyes, and you've practiced that throughout the year. And I would say I didn't put this as a bullet, but honestly, I'm going to type it right now. The most important thing you can do, I'm going to make it really big. I'll probably run out of space, is persevere. I hope I spelled that right. Persevere. Don't give up. You can do this. Do the review work, follow these tips, and you most definitely can get a 5 on the AP test.